You are nothing but a shadow. She doesn't need you. She never did. And today, everyone saw who her real mother is. That's what I heard from my daughter's stepmother. Those words cut me deeply, but they were the push I needed to reveal the whole truth. And this is my story. I never imagined that the most awaited news of my daughter's life would reach me not from her own lips, but through the whispers of the neighborhood. And on a Saturday morning, one of those when the sun seems to shine too brightly, almost enough to blind you from the truth, I was sweeping the porch when Mrs. Ruth, my neighbor across the street, crossed over with that smile full of secrets that only gossips know how to nurture. "Congratulations," she said, her voice dripping with curiosity. "You must be over the moon with the news." I gave an awkward smile, trying to hide my confusion. "News?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "Why, your daughter's wedding, dear. The whole town is talking. It's going to be quite the event." The broom slipped from my hands. For a moment, I felt as if the ground had opened up beneath my feet. A wedding. My daughter's wedding. How could everyone else know while I, her own mother, hadn't heard a single word? I tried to disguise the shock, smoothing my hair with trembling hands. "Oh, yes, of course, the wedding." My tone came out colder than I meant. Mrs. Ruth, clearly satisfied with the reaction she had provoked, went on her way, spreading the news like sparks on dry straw. As soon as she walked off, I sat down on the porch chair. My heart pounded in my chest, and one question echoed endlessly. Why hadn't my daughter told me? I spent the rest of the day in a whirlwind of thoughts. Memories crashed over me like waves, without warning. I remembered the first party dress I sewed for her, the school notebooks I wrapped in colorful paper, the sleepless nights caring for her fevers. I'd seen her born, grow, dream, and now she was about to marry, and I found out through the neighbor. Her silence toward me hurt more than any harsh words she could have said. When your own family pushes you aside, the pain feels unbearable. But this story proves that the truth always finds a way to come out. Stay with me to hear the ending, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next ones. That very night, I called my daughter's cell phone. I waited, once, twice, 3 times. The call went to voicemail every time. I sent a short message. "I've heard talk about the wedding. I want to give you a hug, sweetheart. Can we talk?" The 3 little dots on the screen never appeared. In the days that followed, the whole town seemed to conspire against me. At the grocery store, I overheard 2 women chatting about the imported wedding dress. At the bakery, someone said the party would be a luxurious affair. I, who should have been at the center of it, all was just a clandestine spectator to other people's conversations. Each detail I overheard hurt me more. It wasn't just the lack of an invitation. It was the feeling that my daughter had erased my place in her life. By the end of that week, I received the second blow. My sister, my daughter's aunt, called me. "Have you bought your dress for the big day yet? I heard it's going to be at the club's grand hall. Did you know your daughter's stepmother helped pick out the caterer?" I nearly dropped the phone. The stepmother. Yes, my ex-husband's current wife, the woman who came into our lives after the divorce, was involved in the preparations. Not just involved. She seemed to be taking the place that should, by right, have been mine. I swallowed back my tears. "No, I haven't bought a dress yet," I answered, unable to admit the truth. I wasn't even sure if I had the right to be there. That night, I lay in bed but couldn't sleep. The image of the stepmother, smiling beside my daughter at the altar, gnawed at me from the inside. Me, the mother, forgotten. Her, the intruder, celebrated. Every memory opened a fresh wound. I remembered when my daughter was just 7 years old and cried every time she spent a weekend with her father. She'd say she missed me, that his house didn't smell like our home. I'd cradle her in my arms, promising I would never leave her alone. And now it was she who was leaving me. Days later, I finally worked up the courage to go to my daughter's house. I knocked, my heart racing. When she opened the door, she was glowing, her eyes bright with excitement. For a second, I thought she would hug me and tell me everything, but her smile faded when she saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she said flatly, as if my presence were an inconvenience. "Yes, sweetheart. I heard about the wedding. I wanted to hear it from you," she sighed, crossing her arms. "Mom, I don't want any drama right now. Things are busy, and I'd prefer if you stayed out of it." "Stay out of it," I repeated, my voice breaking. "I'm your mother. How can you shut me out like this?" "It's better this way," she replied, looking away. "The maid of honor's already chosen." My stepmother's been a big help. I need peace right now, not reminders of the past. Her words cut deeper than any knife. Reminders of the past. That's what she called everything I had done for her. I left without strength. Outside, the cold wind hit me, but the pain inside was worse. I didn't sob aloud. My tears simply ran silently down my face, as if even the world had no right to know my pain. That night, staring into the mirror, I faced my own reflection. I saw the wrinkles time had left, the marks of battles fought alone, and I realized that somehow, my daughter had chosen to erase me from her life. I didn't yet know how I would bear it. But one thing became clear. If she thought I would stay silent, hidden, swallowing humiliation, she was mistaken. Something inside me was beginning to awaken, and this was only the first wound. After that curt conversation with my daughter, I spent days in silence. Not a peaceful silence, but the kind that throbs like a hidden wound in the dark. I no longer wanted to leave the house. Every street corner seemed to echo the approaching wedding, and every detail reminded me I wasn't part of it, but it was impossible to avoid. One ordinary morning, as I walked to the pharmacy, I saw a group of women gathered outside the bakery. I recognized some of them old family friends, women who had watched my daughter grow up. My steps slowed as I realized what they were talking about. The stepmother's handling everything so elegant, one said. They say she picked the flowers for the church, another added. And she even got a discount on the caterers. She knows everyone in town, a third chimed in. I froze. The stepmother, always her. It felt as if my very existence had been replaced. Me, the mother who carried her, nursed her, raised her, had been forgotten. And she, who arrived years later, was now the center of attention. The women laughed, enchanted by the devotion of the new mother of the bride. Not one of them noticed me standing there, listening to every word. That afternoon, I decided to call my sister again. I needed some kind of confirmation, even if it hurt. Have you spoken to your niece? I asked. On the other end, silence. I have, my sister finally replied. She's very involved with the stepmother, says she's the one who's been supporting her the most. She even told me the stepmother will be helping her walk into the church. My heart nearly stopped. Walk into the church, I repeated, unable to believe it. Yes, apparently her father will walk her down the aisle, and the stepmother will be right behind, as if she were you. The words echoed like a cruel sentence. The stepmother wasn't just present, she was being exalted in the very role that, by nature, should have been mine. I hung up without saying another word. My throat was so tight nothing could come out. That night was unbearable. I sat before the box where I keep old mementos, yellowed photographs, birthday cards, childhood drawings. One of them, scribbled by my daughter at 6 years old, read, "Mommy, you're my best friend." I held that paper with trembling hands. The tears finally came heavy hot, tasting of abandonment. How had all of this vanished so quickly? In the days that followed, more news reached me, though I didn't seek it out. A neighbor mentioned that the stepmother had booked the band for the party. Another said she was picking out the table decorations. Even the wedding dress seemed to bear her influence. It was as if my daughter had handed complete control to that woman. And me, I was only a ghost. Then I gathered the courage to go to the church where the wedding would be held. I slipped in quietly, pretending to be just another curious onlooker. The place was already being prepared for the ceremony, pews adorned with satin boughs, flowers being tested in arrangements, and there she was, the stepmother, arms crossed, weighing in on everything. I watched as she pointed to the arrangements, asking for the colors to be changed, as if she owned the event. I watched her chatting with the priest, smiling, as though she'd won everyone's trust. And what hurt most, I saw my daughter beside her, smiling, listening to every suggestion, as if they were partners, as if the stepmother were her mother. My instinct was to step forward, say something, demand respect, shout that this place was mine, but my legs wouldn't move. I stood frozen at the back of the church, swallowing the scene, feeling a crushing weight on my chest. It wasn't just exclusion, it was replacement. I stumbled back home like someone returning from a lost battle. The reflection in the mirror showed a tired woman, eyes swollen, shoulders slumped. I was no longer seen as a mother. Worse still, it seemed my own daughter no longer wanted me to be. But within that pain, something began to burn silently. A small flame of revolt, faint but impossible to extinguish. If my daughter thought she could erase our history with satin ribbons and church flowers, She was wrong. I carried scars she could never erase, and somehow, I would find a way to show her and the world that a mother cannot be replaced. The news I feared most arrived in the cruelest way, as if life itself took pleasure in testing me. It was on a rainy afternoon, one of those when the whole town is wrapped in a heavy gray. I was coming back from the market, carrying 2 bags, when I heard lively voices coming from the corner house. Curious, I slowed my steps. It was impossible not to hear laughter, comments about fabrics, flowers, and invitations. Look at this, how beautiful. Imported paper, gold lettering, embossed names. The stepmother helped pick it out, so refined. And they were all delivered last night, such a thoughtful touch. My body froze. Invitations. Everyone had received them. Everyone, except me. I ran home as if fleeing a fire. I shut the door, dropped the bags in the kitchen, and sat at the table, trying to steady my breathing. The tears came before my thoughts even formed. I hadn't received anything. No invitation, not even a keepsake. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a choice. My daughter had chosen to exclude me. That night, I couldn't eat. The plate sat untouched, the beans growing cold while I stared into emptiness. Memories of the past surged over me like rough waves. Me holding her hand on the first day of school, her crying in my lap after her first heartbreak, me sewing her graduation dress until midnight. And now, she smiled beside her stepmother while I was forgotten. The next day, I decided to test reality. I gathered my courage and went to visit Mrs. Marcia, a neighbor who had always been close to us. I knocked on the door with a fake smile. She greeted me warmly. "Oh, you came at just the right time. I just opened the wedding invitation. Look how wonderful." She showed me the box. Yes, it wasn't just an envelope. It was a white box tied with a blue satin ribbon. Inside it, the luxurious invitation in golden letters. There was even a soft fragrance on the paper. I looked at it with my heart crushed. My name wasn't there. There was no sign of me. "And yours, has it arrived yet?" Mrs. Marcia asked, without malice, just curious. I forced a smile. "Oh, it must be on its way." I left carrying a lie, but also a certainty. I truly hadn't been invited. The weeks that followed were the most humiliating of my life. Every neighbor I passed seemed to have something to say about the invitation. "Beautiful, isn't it? I've never seen anything like it. Your daughter's to be congratulated. It's going to be the event of the year." And I always answered with the same mask, a quick smile, a nod, but inside, with every comment, a knife pierced me. One day, I ran into the mailman on the street. He greeted me cheerfully. "I've been delivering some gorgeous invitations lately. You're all going to shine at that wedding." I wanted to scream no. I didn't receive one. I, the mother, was forgotten. But I stayed silent, swallowing the scream along with my tears. At home, I began collecting painful memories. I opened the photo album and turned the pages slowly. There was her first birthday, with the bear-shaped cake. Her school graduation, with that wide smile. The day she got her first job, bringing me flowers in gratitude. Each photo seemed to mock me. "Look at everything you did, and see now what you've received in return." It was during one of those sleepless nights that I decided to write. I picked up an old notebook and began recording everything. The humiliations, the silences, the whispers behind my back. I didn't know if I was writing to take revenge, to leave proof, or simply to keep from losing my mind. Each word I put on paper was a tear turned into strength. If the world wanted me to be invisible, I wouldn't let my own story be erased. One day, while out shopping, I saw the stepmother walking into the flower shop. She was elegant, wearing expensive clothes, smiling as if she were the protagonist of the wedding. I couldn't resist. I stood on the other side of the street, watching. She chose flowers, discussed prices, hugged acquaintances. Everyone greeted her with enthusiasm, calling her mother of the bride. A lump formed in my throat. The word mother, aimed at her, stabbed my chest like a blade. I wanted to cross the street and scream, "I'm the mother," but my legs wouldn't obey. I went home with a weight that felt like it doubled my shoulders. At night, as I stared at the moon through the window, a bitter thought crossed my mind. Maybe my daughter really believed the stepmother was worth more than me. Maybe she had chosen to erase my presence on purpose, like someone throwing away an old photograph. That possibility tore me apart inside. But at the same time, it began to awaken something I couldn't yet name. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't revenge. It was something different, a need to resist. I didn't know how yet, but I felt that somehow, life would give me the chance to show the truth. Sometimes silence weighs heavier than any cruel word. In the days that followed, I realized it wasn't just the absence of an invitation that hurt me, but the way everyone around me seemed to expect an answer I couldn't give. It was as if the whole town knew about my daughter's wedding, and I alone had been left out. At the bakery, while waiting in line, I overheard two women whispering behind me, "Look, that's the bride's mother. Do you think she's the maid of honor? She must be thrilled." My body went cold. I pretended not to hear, but my hands trembled so much I nearly dropped the bread. When I turned to pay, the clerk smiled. So excited for the big day. I took a deep breath and forced a faint smile. Yes, excited. The lie tasted bitter, like bile in my mouth. On the street, every person seemed to carry an unspoken question. Have you bought your dress yet? Will you wear heels or go for comfort? The ceremony promises to be unforgettable. I answered with evasions, always smiling, always pretending. But inside, I felt like an actress playing a role I hadn't chosen. At home, the loneliness was even crueler. I'd sit in the living room, staring at the phone, waiting for my daughter to call, to change her mind, to apologize. But her silence was deafening. Each minute without a message was proof that I had truly been erased. The worst was when I ran into my old friend Lydia at the market. She hugged me warmly, oblivious to the wound I carried. "So, dear, is everything ready for the wedding? It'll be so moving to see your daughter at the altar." I felt my face burn, my heart raced, and for a few seconds I couldn't breathe. I smiled, faking joy. "Yes, it will be beautiful." She didn't notice the lie, or maybe she did, but chose not to dig deeper. That night, I cried myself to sleep. But before closing my eyes, a quiet anger consumed me. Why did I have to lie? Why did I have to carry this burden in silence, while the stepmother proudly flaunted the role she had stolen from me? One day, I went to the beauty salon, trying to take care of myself. While they washed my hair, two women nearby spoke loudly. The stepmother looks stunning. She's wearing a navy blue dress, custom-made in another city. They say she deserves it. After all, she's helped the bride with everything. None of this would be happening without her. I closed my eyes, pretending not to hear, but each word was a knife. When I left, I felt as though my dignity had fallen to the floor, along with the strands of hair they'd cut. The silence I kept felt like a prison. I couldn't tell anyone the truth, the shame was too great. How could I admit that my own daughter didn't want me at the wedding? It was easier to smile and lie, but inside me, the pain grew dark, suffocating. One afternoon, my niece, my sister's daughter, came to visit. She walked in full of excitement, her eyes sparkling. "Auntie, did you see my invitation? I'm so happy. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait to see you there too." I swallowed hard. Of course, dear, it'll be an unforgettable day. She didn't notice the knot in my throat, or maybe she did, but chose not to ask. After she left, I sat on the couch and cried like a child. I no longer had the strength to uphold so many lies. I began avoiding leaving the house. I stopped going to the bakery, the market, the salon. I preferred hunger and solitude to facing the curious stares and suffocating questions. I became a prisoner of my own silence. One night, while the city slept, I went out for a walk. The cold wind hit my face, and I looked at the lit windows of the houses, imagining the conversations inside. Did anyone suspect the truth? Did everyone believe I was, indeed, involved in the preparations? That thought ate away at me. My silence wasn't just penance, was also protection. If I told the truth, the humiliation would spread even faster. It was easier to carry alone the weight of being forgotten than to hear the whole town talking about the daughter who had erased me. Even so, deep inside, a small flame endured. With each tear, each lie, each forced silence, something inside me grew in secret. It wasn't immediate revenge. It wasn't hatred. It was something else, an instinct for survival, a need to prove one day that I was not disposable. And though I didn't yet know how, I felt that day would come. There came a point when I could no longer endure the silence. The memories were crushing me, and with every new comment from the neighbors, the wound opened a little more. I knew I wouldn't be able to move forward without looking my daughter in the eye and asking, why? It was on a Sunday afternoon that I made the decision. The sky was overcast, and the air carried that scent of rain about to fall. I walked to her house with firm steps, even though my legs trembled on the inside. Each meter I walked was an inner dialogue. Maybe she hugged me, maybe she apologized, maybe there's still a place for me on that day. But deep down, a fear throbbed, the fear of hearing confirmation of what I already knew. When I knocked on the door, I heard hurried footsteps on the other side. My daughter appeared, her face tired but still beautiful, with the same brightness in her eyes I'd known since she was a child. For a second, I saw the little girl who used to run into my arms, but the illusion shattered when she spoke. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her tone wasn't affectionate, it was irritated. I swallowed hard. "I needed to talk to you. Can we speak for a moment?" She sighed, glanced behind her, as if afraid someone might see me there, and finally opened the door. I stepped into the living room and sat on the couch, which seemed to have been replaced by new decor, no doubt chosen by the stepmother. My daughter crossed her arms, standing in front of me like she was building an invisible wall. "What's this about?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "Sweetheart, I heard about the wedding from other people. Not from you. And now I know I didn't get an invitation. I need to understand. What did I do for you to exclude me like this?" She looked away, pressing her lips together. "Mom, it's complicated. Complicated. I'm your mother. I've been by your side through everything. How can it be complicated? You don't understand. I need peace. And you bring back memories I'd rather leave behind." Her words hit me like a punch. "Memories? I raised you. Memories of what, sweetheart? Of love, of struggle, of everything I did for you." She looked at me with coldness. "I don't want the wedding to be about old resentments. The stepmother's been helping me, supporting me. It's easier this way." My whole body trembled. Easier to erase your own mother. Easier to pretend I never existed. She stayed silent, but the silence said more than any answer. The tears began to stream down my face before I could stop them. "Do you have any idea what it means for a mother not to be invited to her own daughter's wedding? Do you know the humiliation I feel every time someone asks me about the big day and I have to pretend?" She turned her eyes away. "Mom, please, don't make this harder." "Harder for who? For you, who erases me? Or for me, who's forced to pretend I don't have a daughter?" Anger and pain mixed in my voice. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to make her feel even a fraction of what I felt. But all I did was stand up. I looked into her eyes, searching for some trace of the girl who once called me her best friend. I didn't find it. Before leaving, I said only, "One day you'll understand what you've done. And when that day comes, you'll remember these tears." I turned my back and walked out, leaving behind not only her house, but a piece of myself. The rain began to fall as I walked home, each drop running down my face mixed with my tears, washing away a pain I couldn't hide. I had faced my daughter, I had asked for answers, and all I received was silence and disdain. But inside me, a decision was taking shape. I would not allow that to be the final word. If she wanted to erase me, I would find a way to show her that a mother cannot be replaced. After the conversation with my daughter, I went back home with my heart in pieces. As much as I wanted to believe there was still space for me, it was clear someone else had taken my place, and that someone had a name, a face, a rehearsed smile: the stepmother. It wasn't enough that she had entered my daughter's life when her father and I separated. Now she seemed to have turned into a constant shadow, a presence that kept growing, sucking away from me everything that was rightfully mine. The following week, the proof came to me in the flesh. I went downtown to take care of an overdue bill when, suddenly, I saw a crowd in front of the most expensive bridal shop in town. Curious, I got closer. And there she was, the stepmother, wearing an elegant dress and high heels, walking into the store with my daughter beside her. The two of them were laughing, conspiratorial like mother and daughter. I stood frozen on the other side of the street, invisible. People around me whispered, "Look at that, such a devoted stepmother. She's involved in everything. She really deserves recognition. She's taken on the role of mother." My body shook. Taken on the role of mother. Those words pounded in my mind like hammer blows. I wanted to cross the street, storm into that store, and shout for everyone to hear, "I'm the mother. Mitha, one who raised her, who fought for her, who gave every piece of my life for this girl." But my legs wouldn't move. I stayed there, swallowing the poison in silence. The next day, another scene. I passed by the church, already nearly ready for the ceremony. Inside, I saw the stepmother talking to the priest. She gestured, smiled, gave instructions as if she were the host of the event, and the priest, distracted, seemed charmed by her dedication. I felt my blood boil. It was as if the whole world believed she had the right to occupy that space, and me, I was just a ghost. News spread quickly. At the bakery, I overheard two women talking. The stepmother managed to get a sponsor for part of the party. She's influential, has contacts. Yes, the bride is lucky. She's got a mother of the heart as well as one by blood. I couldn't take it. I turned away and left before they noticed the tears running down my face. A mother of the heart. As if my heart hadn't given everything. As if the love I'd planted were disposable. At home, I sat at the kitchen table, elbows on the wood, my face buried in my hands. That's when I realized the stepmother wasn't just a helper. She was slowly claiming the role of protagonist, and the most painful thing was seeing my daughter allow it. A few days later, my sister came to visit. She brought flowers, maybe to cheer me up, but quickly saw the pain in my face. I sat with her and poured my heart out. You don't understand. She's taking my place. Everyone talks about her as if she's the bride's mother. Nobody remembers me. My sister held my hand. You're the mother. You always will be. Nobody can erase that. I shook my head, bitter. Yes, they can. My daughter already has. Didn't you see? She's made it clear she doesn't want me to be part of that day. The one by her side in every detail is the stepmother. It's like I've been replaced. Not replaced, smothered. But one day, the truth will come out. Her words tried to console me, but the wound was too raw to heal. I spent entire nights awake, imagining what else the stepmother was planning. Would she give a speech at the wedding? Would she be introduced as the mother of the bride? Would I even be erased from the photo album? These thoughts tormented me like waking nightmares. That's when I started paying closer attention. Every comment that reached me, every rumor, every detail about the preparations, I kept them like pieces of a puzzle. And one thing became clear. The stepmother wasn't just helping, she was running the show. She was the one choosing the flowers, hiring the services, solving the problems. My daughter had made her her right hand, and me, I wasn't even invited. One afternoon, I decided to go to the market. While picking out fruit, I overheard two women talking in the next aisle. The stepmother is an example. Imagine building such a strong bond with her stepdaughter. You'd never guess she's not the real mother. Yes, they say she's even closer to the bride than the mother herself. It was too much. I gripped an apple so tightly I nearly crushed it. I left the market with my heart racing, my hands sweating. That's when I realized it wasn't just personal pain. It was public humiliation. Everyone believed the story that I was irrelevant. That night, in front of the mirror, I made a silent promise. I wouldn't let that woman erase my story. I wouldn't allow myself to be reduced to nothing on the most important day of my daughter's life. I still didn't know how. I still didn't know when. But I would find a way to resist. Because a mother may be forgotten by everyone, but she never stops being a mother. I spent days chewing over every word, every look, every gesture I saw from the stepmother beside my daughter. It was as if life had shoved me into a dark corner, forced to watch from afar the stage where I'd once been the main character. And the worst part was realizing that everyone, absolutely everyone, believed the lie, that this woman deserved to be called mother. But one silent night, lying in bed with my eyes fixed on the ceiling, I realized something. I was letting myself be buried alive, and that couldn't go on. I got up in the middle of the night, turned on the living room light, and faced my reflection in the old mirror. There was a woman there, yes, tired, her face marked by time, but there was also a fire in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. I was not a shadow. I was not disposable. I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out the notebook where I had been pouring my heart out. But this time, I didn't just write feelings. I wrote promises. I will not stay silent. I will not allow myself to be erased. I will not surrender my place without a fight. If my daughter has chosen to forget, fate will make her remember. I will resist, even in silence, and one day, everyone will see the truth. In the days that followed, something in me changed. I still felt the pain of exclusion, but along with it came a new energy, almost fierce. I started watching more closely, collecting every fragment of information that reached me. I realized the stepmother was not only getting closer to my daughter, but to the entire family. She visited relatives, did favors, smiled on every corner. She built a perfect image of the devoted mother, and me. I was the uncomfortable piece, the ghost everyone preferred not to mention. But the brighter she shone, the stronger my need to resist grew. One day, I went to the church not to suffer this time, but to observe. I sat in the back pew, invisible. I saw the stepmother giving instructions, my daughter obeying them, even the priest laughing at one of her jokes. It was as if she had taken over the place. But instead of crying, I felt something different, a dark calm. I couldn't claw my space back by force, but I could resist in another way, with strategic silence, with a dignity she would never possess. I began walking with my head held high in the street. When someone asked about the wedding, I didn't lie anymore, but I didn't confess the humiliation either. I simply answered, "My daughter has made her decisions. I respect them." It was a short, clipped phrase, but heavy with meaning, and I began to see something in people's eyes: discomfort. Their silence was no longer curiosity but doubt, as if, little by little, they were starting to realize something was wrong with the version of the story the stepmother was selling. One afternoon, I sat down with a friend, Phoebe. She held my hand and said, "I don't understand. How can a daughter exclude her own mother? There's something behind this, I'm sure." I took a deep breath. It's the stepmother's power. She's enchanted everyone, made my daughter believe it's better to erase me than to have me around. She squeezed my hand. "Then resist. Don't let yourself be erased. Even if you don't go to the wedding, don't let your story be told without you." Her words fed the flame already burning inside me. That night, I wrote again in my notebook. They think I'm defeated. They think accepting silence is giving up. But they're wrong. My silence now is strength, it's patience. And when the time comes, it will reveal who I truly am. I began to imagine the future. I didn't know exactly how it would happen, but I felt life would give me a chance to show the truth. Maybe on the wedding day, maybe later, when the masks fell. But that day would come. And until then, I would resist, with dignity, with steadfast silence, with the certainty that a mother cannot be replaced. Deep in my heart, there was still a thread of hope that my daughter might repent before it was too late. But if she didn't, I would be ready to face the humiliation no longer as a victim, but as someone carrying inside herself a truth no one could erase. I had already made my decision. I would no longer be just silence, I would be resistance. Still, nothing prepared me for the pain of hearing my daughter with my own ears, unfiltered, without the neighbors' rumors. It was on a Friday afternoon. I had gone to the seamstress on my daughter's street. I needed to have a simple dress altered for a baptism. When I was done, I decided to walk past her block. I don't know if it was out of hope of seeing her, or simply because the heart insists on searching for what the mind has already given up. As I got closer to her house, I heard voices coming from the garden. I recognized them immediately, my daughter's voice. The other one was the stepmother's. They were laughing. A light, conspiratorial laugh that pierced me like a dagger. I stopped there, behind the low wall, motionless, my heart pounding. I didn't want to hear, but I couldn't pull myself away. "You're lucky, sweetheart," said the stepmother, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Not every bride has someone so willing to help with everything. Your biological mother, well, she never knew how to handle these things. She's always been so disorganized, so bitter." My chest burned. It was as if she were spitting venom over everything I had lived. My daughter sighed. "I know. That's why I didn't want to involve her. It would only be stressful. I don't want to remember old problems at my wedding." Old problems. That's what she called my presence. They laughed again, like close friends. And the stepmother went on. "You're doing the right thing. Leave her out. This is your day, and you deserve only joy. Think of me as a second mother. A mother who can be at your side without bringing those heavy memories." I felt my whole body tremble. A second mother, a mother who can be at your side. It was like hearing someone rip from inside me the most sacred right I possess. My daughter answered with a sweetness she hadn't used with me in years. "And you've been incredible. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to plan any of this. I want everyone to know how much you mean to me." Her words crushed me. I stood there, breathless, listening to my daughter thank the stepmother for playing the role that had always been mine. I wanted to run into the garden, to scream, to expose all the truths, but my legs wouldn't move. What could I possibly say to change anything there? I stayed frozen, hidden behind the wall, listening to them talk about flowers, guests, music, and about me. "Do you think she'd try to show up?" my daughter asked. The stepmother laughed. "And even if she does, Nobody cares about her anymore. She'll just be another faded figure. Trust me, sweetheart. You don't need her." Those words were like a series of stabs. You don't need her. I swallowed back my tears. That phrase cut through me so deeply, my hands began to shake. I left slowly, like a fugitive, with heavy steps and tears streaming unchecked. The streets were full, but all I saw were blurs. My body kept walking, but inside I was in pieces. I reached home, closed the door, and collapsed into the kitchen chair. I cried until I had no strength left. I cried as I hadn't cried since the divorce. But when the tears dried, what remained was a bitter taste mixed with something new, anger. I picked up my notebook and wrote, "Today I heard with my own ears what I feared. My daughter not only excluded me but thanked the other for taking my place. She called me a bad memory. She called me a problem." And the stepmother proclaimed herself mother. Yes, I cried. Yes, I broke. But I was reborn too. If they think I'll accept being erased, they're mistaken. My pain now is my weapon. And the silence they believe is defeat will become the cry that one day will echo. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat, replaying every word. And the more I remembered, the more the pain hardened into something solid. It was as if life were forging inside me a strength I hadn't known existed. I didn't yet know how I would use it. I didn't know if I would confront them at the altar, at the party, or afterward when the masks fell. But I knew one thing: the stepmother would not go unpunished, and my daughter would one day see that a mother is not replaced. The whole town seemed to have turned into a stage for my daughter's wedding. Wherever I went, there was a new detail, an enthusiastic conversation, a passing comment that reached my ears like a dagger. At the bakery, they talked about the buffet. At the pharmacy, they discussed the important guests. At the flower shop, the arrangements had already been ordered. Even the shop windows seemed to shine brighter, as if the entire town's commerce were preparing for the big event. And me, I was the only invisible spectator to this grand celebration. That week, while buying bread, I heard the bakery owner tell another customer excitedly, "A 5-tier cake. Can you believe it? With sugar flowers. We've never seen anything like it around here." The customer's eyes widened. "And they say it was the bride's stepmother who got the pastry chef from out of town. She's organizing everything, a woman of respect." I gave a faint smile, unnoticed, but inside my stomach turned. It was no longer just exclusion. It was as if the stepmother had become the star at the center. And me, I was nothing but a faded shadow. Another day, I went to the market. In line, 2 women were discussing the bridesmaids' dresses. It's going to be a palette of blues, all matching. The bride is so well guided by the stepmother. If it were up to the mother, I doubt it would be so organized. I almost dropped my groceries. Those words were too cruel. How could they talk about me as if I were incompetent, as if I had never been enough? I left with my heart in pieces, vowing not to return to the market until the wedding was over. Little by little, I realized I was isolating myself. My house had become both refuge and prison. I closed the curtains so I wouldn't see the movement in the street. I turned off the phone so I wouldn't have to hear questions. But the world always found a way to knock at my door. One morning, my neighbor Donna Ruth called from the gate. When I opened the window, she smiled with that air of someone who always has news to share. "Have you seen the gift list? It's on display at the store, on the corner. Fancy things, an imported fridge, a crystal dinner set." I nodded without showing the pain her words brought. She didn't know, or maybe she did, but chose to pretend. I quickly shut the window, suffocated by the feeling that my whole life had turned into a spectacle I wasn't part of. The streets began to be decorated with small flower arrangements, sponsored by local merchants, and I walked through them like a stranger, like someone passing through a party without an invitation. On people's faces there was always the same expression when they saw me: curiosity mixed with pity. I could read in their eyes the question no one dared to say aloud: why isn't the bride's mother involved in the preparations? And even without words, that question hurt me like a scream. One afternoon, I decided to face the world and went to the fabric store. I needed to buy something simple to mend my clothes. When I walked in, the clerk smiled. "Oh, what a coincidence. Your daughter was here yesterday with the stepmother. They bought beautiful fabrics for the table decorations. It's going to be spectacular." I smiled back, pretending to be natural. I imagined so. But as soon as I left the store, the tears came. I couldn't escape. Every corner of the town was a living reminder that I was being erased. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook. I wrote. They are building a castle of dreams on top of my exclusion. Every detail of this wedding shines with the absence of my name, but I see it, I feel it, and one day, that shine will blind the ones who forgot me. I began walking at night, when the city slept. It was the only time the streets were empty, when I didn't have to hear comments or fake smiles. The cold night wind was harsh, but it still felt lighter than the weight of the stairs during the day. It was during these walks that I began to reflect. Maybe I would never be invited. Maybe my daughter had truly chosen to erase me. But I would not give up existing. My resistance would not be shouted aloud. It would be silent but steady, like a rock time cannot wear down. One morning, my sister came to visit. She sat with me and brought news. Almost everything's ready. The club's hall is decorated. The rehearsals have started. The stepmother is everywhere. I swallowed hard. And you, are you going? She sighed. I got the invitation. Yes, but I don't know how I'll look at her without feeling anger. You deserve to be there more than anyone. Her eyes filled with tears, mine too. And in that moment, I realized that even erased, there were still those who saw the truth. Time passed too quickly. Each day felt like a step closer to the wedding, and each step was a blow to my heart. The streets were full of rumors, the shop windows displayed wedding favors, and the conversations were about nothing else. And I, the bride's mother, remained invisible. That night, I sat in the kitchen chair, elbows on the table, head in my hands. The tears came again heavy, but in the midst of my crying, something inside me whispered, search for memories. Go back to what is only yours. Remember what no one can steal. I opened the first box and smelled the past, and in the middle of the pages, I found a note that made me crumble. Mommy, thank you for helping me with my homework. I love you up to the sky. Tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink already faded with time. How could the little girl who wrote that become the woman who now discards me? That night, I fell asleep holding one of the notes. It was a small, crumpled piece of paper she had written when she was only 5. Mommy, you are my son. Until then, all my pain had revolved around my daughter and the stepmother. But as the wedding drew closer, I began to realize there was another figure in this story I knew very little about. Her fiancé, the man for whom my daughter was willing to erase me. I had seen him only a few times, always in passing, always in a hurry, always with that polite smile that felt rehearsed. We had never sat down to talk. There had never been closeness. And yet, it was to him that my daughter was giving her heart, her plans, her life. One afternoon, I went out to buy fruit and ran into him by chance, chatting animatedly with 2 men at the door of a bar. I wouldn't have paid attention if not for the tone of the conversation and the nervousness he showed when he saw me. It was as if he were hiding something. I slowed my pace, pretending not to notice, but my ears caught fragments. The debt has to be paid by the end of the month. I don't want her to find out anything before the wedding. My heart raced. Debt? Find out what? The words echoed in my mind like the first rumble of a coming storm. He saw me and tried to cover it up. He smiled, walked over to me and said, "Good afternoon, ma'am. What a nice surprise to see you here." His smile seemed too perfect, his eyes too anxious. I answered coldly, "Good afternoon," and walked on, but the knot in my chest followed me home. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Today I heard my daughter's fiancé talk about debts. Something about him doesn't convince me. There's a nervousness, a hurry, a mask. Could my daughter be about to marry someone she doesn't really know? And if the stepmother knows but prefers to hide it, to keep up the facade of a perfect family? I need to watch more closely. Maybe my fight isn't just about reclaiming my place. Maybe it's also about protecting my daughter from a mistake that could cost dearly." In the days that followed, I began to notice small things. The fiancé didn't appear in public often, but when he did, he always looked anxious, glancing around like someone afraid of being discovered. He spoke little, said only what was necessary, but his presence left a strange unease in the air. In a casual chat with a neighbor, I heard her say, "He's charming, but I don't know. There's something in his eyes that doesn't inspire trust. Do you feel it too?" I pretended to have no opinion, but inside my heart screamed, "Yes, I feel it." One afternoon, I had to go to the stationery store, and there he was again, buying an unusual amount of paper and pens. I thought of greeting him, but before I could, I heard the clerk ask, "Do you want the invoices in the company's name again?" He replied too quickly, "Yes, yes, of course. I need nothing showing under my name." I frowned. Company, invoices under whose name. There was something hidden. And the more I watched, the more I felt his secret might explode in the middle of the wedding. At night, as I flipped again through my daughter's old letters, the thought wouldn't leave me. Does she know who she's marrying? Fear cut through me. Because, no matter how much she had excluded me, no matter how much she had hurt me, she was still my daughter. And watching her fall into an abyss because of the wrong marriage was something I couldn't bear. The following Sunday, during Mass, I saw the fiancé again. He walked in hurriedly, sat at the back, didn't make the sign of the cross, didn't sing the hymns. He kept glancing at his phone the whole time, like someone who wasn't really there. When it ended, he left before the priest gave the final blessing. I followed him with my eyes, and inside me a certainty grew. That man was hiding something that would come to light. And when it did, it would be too late to stop my daughter's fall. After the conversation with Helena, a quiet courage began to grow inside me. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't face everything alone. If there was anyone who could and should support me, it was my daughter's father. He had been at my side when she was born, when we took our first steps as a family. Even after the separation, I believed that, at least in this moment, he would recognize my place. Deep down, I hoped he would be the bridge, the balance, the voice of reason. I decided to look for him. I went to his house on a Saturday afternoon. He was in the garden, watering the plants, as if the world were perfectly in order. When he saw me, he looked surprised, but not hostile. "Well, it's been a while. What brings you here?" I took a deep breath, trying to hold back my emotions. "It's about our daughter's wedding." He slowly set the hose down, wiped his hands on the cloth he carried in his pocket, and invited me inside. In the living room, the smell of fresh coffee mingled with an uncomfortable silence. I sat in an armchair. He remained standing, as if not wanting to commit too much. "What exactly do you want to know?" My voice trembled, but I didn't hesitate. "I want to know why I'm being excluded, why I didn't receive an invitation, why the stepmother has taken my place. You're the father. Don't you think this is unfair?" He sighed, looking away. "It's not that simple." "Not that simple," I repeated, feeling anger rise. "I'm her mother. I should be at our daughter's side at this moment, and instead, she's handed everything over to that woman. And you, what do you do? Watch in silence." He ran a hand through his hair, visibly uncomfortable. "The situation is delicate. You know, she doesn't like conflict. She said she'd rather keep her distance to avoid ruining the mood. I just want to respect her decision." My heart burned. Respect her decision, even when that decision is to erase me. "Do you think it's fair for the bride's mother to be treated like a problem?" He lowered his head. "I don't want conflict. It's her wedding. It's her day. It's not about us." His words were like knives. "It's not about us." But how could it not be? It was also about me. About everything I had given. About the life I had dedicated. I stood up, eyes full of tears. "You think you're avoiding conflict, but you're just being complicit. Your silence is as cruel as her exclusion." He didn't respond. He just stood there, motionless, trapped in his own complacency. And I left that house with a bitter certainty. I was alone. On the way back, the cold wind hit my face, but nothing hurt more than the abandonment. It wasn't just my daughter rejecting me. Her father had chosen silence too. And together, they had sentenced me to invisibility. I got home and collapsed on the couch. The tears came again, but this time they weren't just from pain. They were from indignation. I picked up my notebook and wrote, "Today I learned I can't count on him. My daughter's father prefers to stay silent, prefers to be neutral, prefers to watch injustice as if it had nothing to do with him. But I know his silence is part of the betrayal. I no longer expect support from anyone. If I have to fight, it will be alone. And perhaps, for that very reason, my victory will be even more painful for them. Because when the mask falls, there will be no excuse to erase the silence of those who stood by." That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. I saw a tired, marked, wounded woman, but I also saw a spark of something new, a strength that no longer depended on anyone. If my daughter's father had chosen omission, if the stepmother had chosen falseness, if my daughter had chosen betrayal, I would choose resistance, alone, if necessary. And deep down, I knew life would still give me a chance to show who I truly was. The eve arrived, like a thunderclap. I knew this day would come, but even so, it caught me off guard, as if it had fallen on me all at once. From early on, the town seemed to breathe a different air. The streets were busier, the stores crowded, neighbors buzzing with excitement about the upcoming celebration. It was as if everyone were part of a collective festivity, everyone except me. I spent the whole morning at home, looking out the window. I saw cars coming and going, relatives arriving with suitcases, neighbors talking loudly about the luxurious reception, and on every face there was the same anticipation. The big day was about to begin. Inside me, a storm. I felt divided. Part of me wanted to disappear, hide under the covers, pretend nothing was happening. The other part burned in silence, wanting to be there, wanting to face them all even without an invitation. In the early afternoon, I got a call from my sister. I answered with a trembling voice. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" she asked cautiously. I stayed silent for a few seconds before replying. "Ready? How could I be ready when I wasn't invited?" She sighed on the other end. "I know, but you can't give up on existing, even if you don't sit next to anyone, even if you stand at the back of the church. You need to be there, at least for yourself." Her words echoed deeply, but fear was stronger. What if they throw me out? What if everyone looks at me with contempt? What if my daughter humiliates me in front of everyone? My sister answered firmly. "And what if, instead, she looks at you and remembers everything you were? What if tomorrow is the day the stepmother's mask falls? Do you want to miss the chance to see that?" I closed my eyes, feeling my heart race. Maybe she was right. The rest of the day dragged by. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every minute my mind created different scenarios. In one, I was at the church, invisible at the back, but still present. In another, I was humiliated in front of everyone. In yet another, my daughter ran to me, asking forgiveness. These fantasies tormented me, like waking dreams. At night, I sat in front of the open wardrobe. I ran my fingers over worn-out clothes, old dresses that had lost their shine. There was nothing worthy of a luxurious wedding. And yet, something inside me said I needed to choose an outfit not to please others, but to remind myself that I still existed. I picked a simple navy blue dress, already worn at other events. I ran my hand over the fabric, as if searching in it for hidden courage. Maybe it wasn't the perfect dress, but it was what I had, and at that moment, it was enough. I went to bed early, but sleep didn't come. The night stretched on endlessly. I lay there, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. And in that silence, a storm of inner voices suffocated me. "Don't go. You'll humiliate yourself. Go. It's your right. Your daughter doesn't want you there, but you're the mother." Nothing changes that. The hours passed, and I found no peace. Sometimes I cried, sometimes I felt anger, sometimes I just stared into the void. It was like standing at the edge of an abyss, not knowing whether to step forward or back. Just before dawn, I got up and went to the living room. I picked up my notebook and wrote, "It's the eve of the wedding. Everyone is excited, everyone is celebrating, except me. My heart is a battlefield. I don't know if I should show up or disappear, but I know one thing. Tomorrow will hurt, whether I'm there or not. The difference is that if I go, maybe I'll see the truth with my own eyes. And if I don't go, maybe I'll carry the doubt and regret forever." What hurts more, being humiliated to my face or being erased in silence? I don't have the answer yet, but I know that tomorrow I must choose. I closed the notebook and took a deep breath. The day was already breaking, and I knew in a few hours the decision would be in front of me. The day dawned differently. I don't know if it was the noise from the streets, the smell of flowers drifting in the air, or simply the awareness that this was the day my daughter would marry, the day I should have been at her side, but wasn't. I got out of bed with my heart tight. The house felt quieter than ever, as if it had sided with my loneliness. I made coffee, but it tasted bitter. I couldn't eat a thing. Meanwhile, through the open windows came echoes of the city, hurried car horns, neighbors' laughter as they got ready, the sound of suitcases being wheeled, everyone heading to the same destination, everyone but me. I put on the navy blue dress I had set aside the night before. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My eyes were red from so many sleepless nights, but in them there was a spark of firmness. I wasn't beautiful. I wasn't flawless like the stepmother surely would be. But I was standing, and that was already a lot. I grabbed my bag, took a deep breath, and left the house. Each step toward the street felt heavy, as if the whole world were watching me. And in fact, It was. On the corner, I ran into Donna Ruth, my gossiping neighbor, glowing in her party dress. "Oh dear, how lovely to see you. Ready? It's going to be a wedding straight out of a movie, isn't it?" I forced a smile. "It is, yes." She didn't notice the weight behind my words. Or maybe she did, but chose to ignore it. I kept walking, feeling eyes follow me through the streets, some filled with curiosity, others with pity. It was as if everyone knew I wasn't supposed to be there, but wanted to see how far I would go. As I approached the church, my heart raced. It was decorated with white flowers, satin boughs, and a red carpet at the entrance. Luxury cars were parked outside, well-dressed guests arriving, photographers capturing every detail. I stood on the sidewalk, watching from afar. People walked past me without noticing, too busy with their own smiles and expectations. My body trembled. Part of me wanted to go in, run to the altar, show that I existed. Another part wanted to turn my back and never look again. Then I heard a laugh I knew well. It was the stepmother, stepping out of an elegant car, arm in arm with my ex-husband. She was stunning, in a navy blue dress, the same color I had chosen, as if it were a direct affront. Everyone surrounded her, praising her, calling her mother of the bride. My chest burned. Every word was a knife. I, the real mother, stood there hidden on the sidewalk while she received the applause that should have been mine. My ex-husband didn't see me, or pretended not to. He walked by with his head held high, as if nothing were wrong. And I understood. He had chosen her side too. I swallowed my tears and stood firm. If I couldn't be at my daughter's side, at least I would see it with my own eyes. I would not be erased without bearing witness. Guests entered one by one. I stayed outside, watching. The sound of the choir began to echo inside, soft, angelic. The wedding was about to start. My feet felt glued to the ground. Fear paralyzed me, but anger pushed me. And in that silent conflict, I made my choice. I would go in. Maybe I had no reserved seat. Maybe they would look at me with contempt. Maybe I would be humiliated. But I would not be invisible. I crossed the street slowly, feeling every gaze fall on me. Some guests recognized me and exchanged uneasy looks. Others pretended not to see. But I walked steadily to the church door. When I reached it, one of the organizers politely but firmly stopped me. "Do you have an invitation, ma'am?" My heart almost stopped. I took a deep breath and answered, "I'm the bride's mother." He looked me up and down, hesitated, and finally stepped aside. "You may enter." I walked in. The interior of the church was breathtaking. White flowers adorned every pew, candelabras lit the altar, and a red carpet stretched down the aisle. Guests whispered, and I knew many of them were talking about me. But I kept walking until I found a place at the back of the church. I sat there, hands trembling in my lap. My heart pounded, and tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. I was there, and that was all that mattered. The choir fell silent, and the wedding march began. Everyone stood up, and then my daughter appeared at the door, arm in arm with her father. She was beautiful, radiant, just as I had always imagined she would be on her wedding day. My eyes filled with tears, but not of pride of pain, because she didn't look at me. She didn't search for me among the faces. It was as if I were invisible even there, inside. Behind her, in calculated steps, came the stepmother, smiling, confident, receiving approving glances and whispers. She was the one standing out. She was the one who seemed to occupy my place. The scene was unbearable. I felt as if I'd been punched in the stomach, but I stayed firm, motionless, head held high. If my daughter didn't want to see me, I would see for her. I would be the silent witness of that day, even if the whole world denied me the right. And inside me, a voice echoed, "This isn't over yet. The truth will still come. And when it does, everyone will know who I really am." The music of the wedding march filled the church with an almost divine force. Guests smiled, some were moved, others snapped photos of every detail as if trying to eternalize that moment. And I, hidden at the back, felt my heart shatter with each step. My daughter walked down the red carpet, arm in arm with her father, radiant. Her white dress seemed to glow beneath the candelabras. And behind her, the figure who stole my breath, the stepmother. She walked with calculated steps, a serene smile on her face, as though she were the protagonist of the scene. Her navy blue dress shimmered under the lights, a cruel copy of the color I had chosen for myself. Every detail seemed planned to wound me, as if to show me the place was hers, not mine. and with every glance from the guests, every whisper, every smile cast in her direction, pain pierced through me. I knew what they were saying without hearing a word. What a wonderful stepmother, so dedicated, so present. She's like the mother. Mother. That word pounded in my ears like mockery. My eyes filled with tears, but I swallowed them down. I wouldn't let them see me broken. If they wanted me invisible, then let it be a silent, unshakable invisibility, one that would one day turn into strength. But the worst was still to come. When my daughter reached the altar, the priest opened his arms in welcome. The groom waited, nervous, but smiling with enchantment. All eyes were on them, all except a few still lingering on the stepmother. She hadn't just escorted the bride. There she now positioned herself at the front, near the godparents, wearing an air of belonging that suffocated me. It was as if she'd been officially included in the wedding party, as if she'd been granted honors that should have been mine. I saw people stand up discreetly to greet her, saw hands clasping hers in recognition. I even saw the photographer capturing images of her next to the bride, smiling, radiant, as if she were a vital part of the day. And I, the real mother, remained at the back, forgotten, ignored, erased. For a moment, I thought of standing. I wanted to run up there, to interrupt the ceremony, to shout, so everyone could hear. She's not the mother. I am. I'm the one who carried this girl in my womb, who rocked her through feverish nights, who taught her to walk, to talk, to dream. But my legs didn't move. It was as if the pain were so heavy it had nailed me to the pew. I only watched, heart torn apart, a spectator in my own life. And in that silence, I heard the whispers. Behind me, two women were murmuring, "It's amazing how the stepmother managed to claim that space. You'd never guess, she's not the biological mother." Yeah. And the other one, "They say the relationship was never good." I swallowed my tears. They're talking about me. They believe the lie. And in that instant, I realized, it wasn't just my daughter, erasing me. It was the story the stepmother had built, accepted and celebrated by everyone. My whole body trembled. My heart beat so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. But amid that internal storm, a decision began to form. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't interrupt the ceremony. I wouldn't humiliate myself in front of them. But I also wouldn't accept this farce in silence anymore. One day, they would all know. One day, they would all see who the mother truly was. And when that day came, the humiliation wouldn't be mine, it would be theirs. I spent the rest of the ceremony in silence, like a rock. I cried inside, but outwardly I kept my head high. I looked at every detail, etched every image into my memory, because deep down, I knew that moment would be the fuel for my turning point. And while the priest spoke of love, unity, and truth, I could only think, what irony. Truth is exactly what's missing here. The ceremony went on like a carefully rehearsed performance. The priest spoke of love, of commitment, of the importance of family. Every word should have filled me with pride, but instead, it only reminded me of the emptiness I carried. It was as if each phrase reopened a wound. And then came the moment I could never have imagined. The priest smiled at my daughter, then looked out at the guests, and said, "Today we don't just celebrate the union of two lives, but also the strength of the family that surrounds them. And among so many dear people, there is someone who deserves special recognition. Someone who stood by the bride at every step, who helped with every detail, who supported her like a true mother. I want to invite the stepmother." The air vanished from my lungs, my eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I'd misheard. But no, he really said it. The stepmother, the true mother. The guests applauded. Some stood up. The sound of clapping echoed through the church like a coronation. And I, at the back, remained still, my hands clenched in my lap, trying not to cry. My eyes fixed on her, as she walked to the altar confident, elegant, wearing the perfect smile of someone who had conquered what she wanted. Every step she took was like a stab. She was walking the same path I once dreamed of taking alongside my daughter. And now, before everyone, she would publicly assume the role that had always been mine. When she took the microphone, silence filled the church. Everyone waited for her words, and I already knew it would be cruel. Cruel not in tone, but in effect. She began with a sweet, almost emotional voice. "My dear friends, today is a day I will never forget. To be here, beside this wonderful young woman, is an immense honor. From the moment I entered her life, I felt that destiny had given me a mission, to love her as a daughter, and she gave me the greatest gift by allowing me to occupy this space. applause, tears in the eyes of the guests, and me, breaking inside. She went on, organizing this wedding, helping with every detail, has been an act of love, because she deserves the best. And I want everyone to know, in my heart, she is my daughter. More applause, more tears, more admiring glances. And then, the phrase that destroyed me, today, I feel I've fulfilled my role as a mother. Mother, she used that word before everyone without fear, without shame, and no one objected. No one looked back, to the back of the church, where I sat. No one remembered me. Tears slid silently down my cheeks as I shrank into the pew. My chest burned, my throat ached, my body trembled. I wanted to stand, to interrupt, to scream, but I couldn't. I stayed there, swallowing the cruelest humiliation of my life. While she was celebrated as mother, I was only a shadow. After her speech, the priest thanked her warmly. Such beautiful words, spoken from the heart. What a blessing to have such an example of motherhood here today. My heart nearly burst out of my chest. An example of motherhood. And me, I, who gave life, who was present at every tear, every triumph, every fall. I was the absence, the failure, the forgotten one. I looked at my daughter. She smiled at the stepmother with tenderness. Her eyes shone with gratitude. And in that look, I realized, it wasn't just the stepmother who had erased me. It was my own daughter who had allowed and wanted this to happen. That realization was like dying while still alive. I knew that speech wasn't just words, it was the consecration of a lie. But it would also be the spark of my resistance. Because if until that moment I still wondered whether to fight, now there was no doubt I would fight, not with shouting, not with violence, but with the truth, with the dignity she would never have. And that dignity, sooner or later, would come to light. I was still stunned by the stepmother's speech when the priest resumed the ceremony. My heart pounded, and the word mother, spoken by her and applauded by everyone, echoed in my ears like mockery. I wanted to stand up and leave, but my legs were rooted to the ground. It was as if fate itself wanted me to stay and see more, and I did. It was time for the groom's vows. He stepped up to the microphone with a nervous smile and looked at my daughter with apparent tenderness. But behind the expression, I noticed something the others probably didn't. Restless eyes, sweaty palms, the demeanor of someone who wasn't just emotional, but carrying a hidden weight. My love, he began, his voice unsteady, when we met, I never imagined we'd come this far. You brought light into my life, gave me courage when I had nothing, showed me I could dream again. Today, before God and everyone here, I promise to be the man you deserve. I promise to take care of you, to protect you from everything, and to give you the life you've always dreamed of. People sighed. Some wiped away tears, others smiled, enchanted, but I felt no tenderness. Something in those words rang false, rehearsed. I promise to give you the life you've always dreamed of. The phrase echoed inside me like a warning. How could he promise that, when I'd already overheard fragments in the streets, debts, unfinished business, hidden secrets? I kept watching. As he spoke, he avoided looking directly at the guests. His eyes darted back and forth, as if afraid of being exposed right there, in front of everyone. And when he said protect you from everything, his voice faltered. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. I saw the tremor on his lips, the hesitation. It was as if he carried a truth he didn't want revealed. The priest smiled and encouraged him. Go on, son. This is the time to open your heart. He took a deep breath, squeezed my daughter's hand, and continued. I know I'm not perfect. I know I've made mistakes. But today, before everyone, I promise those mistakes are behind me. I promise nothing from the past will ever come between us. You are my new chance. The church erupted in applause, but my hands turned cold. Mistakes behind me. Nothing from the past will come between us. What past? What secrets were hidden in those carefully veiled words? I looked at my daughter. She was smiling, emotionally, completely surrendered. She didn't see the subtext, didn't catch the nervousness. She saw only the man who had charmed her, the man promising a golden future. And that terrified me. Because now, more than ever, I was certain he was hiding something, something that could destroy her. In the back pew, my hands trembled. The urge to stand and shout, "Don't believe him," burned inside me. But as before, my legs wouldn't move. I was a prisoner of silence. And yet, every fiber of my being knew what I was witnessing was only the beginning of a fall. When he finished, the groom was warmly applauded. The guests wept, moved by his sincerity. The priest praised him, saying his words were proof of repentance and renewal, but I saw the nervousness, the hesitation, the weight on his shoulders, and I wrote in my notebook, mentally, so I wouldn't forget. He promised too much. He spoke of mistakes no one mentioned. He swore a future without explaining the past. These promises are not love, they are smokescreens, and when the wind blows, it will all come to light. I know. I left the church at the end of the ceremony with my heart in pieces, but also with a premonition. It wasn't just the stepmother who was a facade. The groom, too, was hiding a dangerous truth, and for the first time in a long while, I felt that maybe I had a weapon. Because when that secret came out, and I knew it would, everyone would remember who I was, that it was I who saw, who suspected, who resisted. When the ceremony ended, the guests were ushered into the reception hall next to the church. It was a vast space, lit by crystal chandeliers, with tables decorated in shades of blue and white, flowers in every corner, soft music playing in the background, waiters carrying trays of sparkling wine. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect, like a staged scene designed to impress. I walked there with the others, but it felt as if I were stepping into forbidden territory. My steps were slow, measured, like someone expecting to be thrown out at any moment, and, in a way, that was exactly what I expected. Inside the hall, the tables were full. Guests laughed, toasted, and commented on the bride's beauty and the stepmother's dedication. My name was not mentioned anywhere. I was a ghost, an invisible figure in the midst of everyone. I looked for a place to sit, but saw that all the tables had name cards. None of them bore my name. I wandered through the hall like a stranger, ignored by everyone, until I finally found an empty chair near the door. I sat there, in the corner, trying to disappear. The conversations around me were like knives. The stepmother really outdid herself. Everything's impeccable. She's an example of a mother at heart. The bride must be so proud of her. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying not to cry. But there was no escape. Every word struck me hard. It was as if I were at a banquet where everyone was toasting my own exclusion. At one point, I saw my daughter walking through the hall, smiling, holding her husband's hand. She radiated happiness. Guests surrounded her, praising her, offering blessings, snapping photos, and I stayed there, still, hoping her eyes would find mine, that she would at least notice me. But she didn't. She walked right past me as if I were invisible, as if I didn't exist. My heart clenched so tightly I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from fainting. And then, the cruelest scene, the stepmother climbed onto the small stage and took the microphone again. With the same rehearsed smile, she thanked everyone for coming, praised the efforts of the team, and complimented the newlyweds. And at the end, she said, "Seeing this union come true is like fulfilling a mother's dream. I'm moved to be here, body and soul, with this daughter life has given me as a gift." The entire hall rose to its feet in applause. Some even shouted her name. And I, curled up in the corner chair, felt as if I'd been erased in front of the entire world. A woman near me whispered to her friend, "It's beautiful how the stepmother has taken on this role. The bride is so lucky." The biological mother, from what they say, was never very present. It was like a knife in my chest, never very present. If only they knew the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the silent battles, but no one there wanted my truth. They preferred the pretty version, wrapped in flowers and smiles. I sat in silence, watching, while everyone else enjoyed themselves. The music grew louder, the toasts multiplied, the dance floor filled, and I, in my corner, felt smaller and smaller. It was my daughter's party, but I was the forgotten guest, the ignored shadow, the portrait of a pain no one wanted to see. A waiter came over and, perhaps out of pity, offered me a glass of sparkling wine. I took it, thanked him, and for a moment felt the urge to drink until my soul went numb, but I held back. I didn't want to get drunk. I wanted to feel every pain, every humiliation, because it was that pain that would keep me standing. I lifted the glass to my lips, only to pretend I was participating, but the bitter taste only deepened my revolt. Looking around, I noticed something curious. Though most were enchanted by the stepmother, there were a few different looks, eyes turning discreetly toward me, filled with doubt. Maybe they were distant relatives who remembered my face, maybe old family friends who knew my story. They said nothing, but their eyes told me, "We know who you are." And that, as small as it was, gave me a breath of hope. I knew the humiliation I endured in that hall was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning of the turn. And when that turn came, all those who applauded with their backs to me would remember what they had done. The party went on at full speed. The hall was full of laughter, loud music and glasses being raised every minute. People were having fun, enchanted by the beauty of the decoration and by the spectacle that seemed too perfect. But I, curled up in the corner, saw everything with different eyes. I didn't just see sparkle, I saw masks. Then the toast was announced. Waiters circulated with trays of sparkling wine, filling glasses nonstop. The groom climbed onto the improvised stage, with the bride at his side. The lights turned to him, and everyone fell silent in expectation. My heart raced. After what I'd heard in the church, I already knew. His words hid more than they revealed, and it wouldn't take long for that to become clear again. He raised his glass, smiled nervously, and began, "Ladies and gentlemen, friends, family, today is the happiest day of my life, and I want to thank each one of you who is here, witnessing this moment. Many may not know, but the path to get here was not easy. I've made mistakes, I've stumbled, I've lost, but today, before the woman I love, I promise that all those mistakes are left behind." People applauded, excited, but I held my breath. He was repeating the same tone from his speech in the church, asking forgiveness for sins no one knew about, hinting at shadows he was trying to sweep under the rug. He went on, "I want everyone to know that my life starts over today. Nothing that happened before matters anymore. Nothing can separate us, not even the debts of the past." A strange silence hung in the air. Some guests frowned, others laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but I saw it wasn't a joke. It was a disguised confession. Debts of the past. The words echoed in my mind like a scream. That was what he was hiding. And now he let it slip, even if carelessly, in front of everyone. My daughter smiled, trying to hide it. The stepmother, in the background, applauded enthusiastically, as if wanting to cover up the discomfort. But the damage was done. The guests were whispering, exchanging glances, trying to understand what he meant. I, in my corner, felt a strange mix of pain and hope. Pain, because my daughter didn't notice anything. Hope, because maybe that was the first visible crack in the farce. He raised his glass once more, his voice unsteady. "Today I toast not only to our love, but to a new chance, a life without a past, only future. A life where no one can judge us." The applause resumed, but no longer had the same strength. There was a shadow there, a doubt, a weight that everyone felt, even if no one said it out loud. And I noted in my mind, he confessed. He disguised it as a promise, but he confessed. There are debts, there are secrets, and they will come to light. It's just a matter of time. After the toast, the music started again, but the mood was no longer the same. Some guests laughed more restrainedly, others looked at the groom with curious suspicion. For the first time, I realized the spell was beginning to break, and deep down, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Revenge. I didn't need to stand up. I didn't need to shout. I just had to wait. The truth was already announcing itself. Later, when I managed to slip out unnoticed, I went home exhausted. The party still echoed in my ears. The music, the laughter, the applause. But what echoed most were those words. Not even the debts of the past. The hall still echoed with music and laughter. But I knew, the mood had changed after the toast. It wasn't just my impression. There were glances, whispers, discreet murmurs that revealed something new. The first crack in the perfect narrative. From my corner, I watched. A couple at the next table spoke in low voices. "You heard. He mentioned debts." "Yes. Do you think it was just a way of speaking? Or, I don't know." But it was strange. Further on, two men commented between nervous laughs. "Debts of the past. What an unfortunate phrase for a groom, don't you think?" Maybe he was joking, but I also got suspicious. Each of these phrases cut through me like a knife and a bomb at the same time. A knife, because it confirmed that my daughter was about to unite herself with someone who hid dangerous secrets. A bomb, because it proved that I wasn't the only one to notice. Others were starting to see too. The stepmother, however, didn't seem shaken. She moved around the hall with her trained smile, handing out hugs, greetings, and sweet words. But I saw her eyes betrayed unease. She realized the spell had been broken, and she was trying, with all her strength, to glue the pieces back together before anyone got cut. My daughter, on the other hand, seemed oblivious. She danced, smiled, welcomed the guests, completely surrendered to that false fairy tale. And that was what hurt the most, seeing her happy, not realizing the abyss ahead. I stayed silent, watching more. And the more I saw, the more a certainty grew inside me. I didn't need to expose myself. I didn't need to shout. The truth itself would take care of coming to light. The groom had already taken the first step, letting his secrets slip out. Now it was just a matter of time until everyone saw it. At one point, a distant cousin came over to my table. I felt a chill in my stomach. Had he come to confront me? But to my surprise, he pulled out a chair and sat beside me. "I saw you back there in the church," he said softly. "I know I didn't applaud as I should have, but I want you to know, I remember you. I remember everything you did for her when she was a child. No one can erase that." My eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Sometimes I think I'm alone in this." He shook his head. "You're not." "And about the groom," he paused, looking around before continuing. "I've heard talk about strange business dealings of his. Maybe your daughter doesn't know, but something doesn't add up. This marriage could bring bigger pains than you imagine." My heart raced. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't seeing ghosts. There really was something wrong. And now others were beginning to notice too. When he walked away, I felt a new strength inside me. I noted mentally so I wouldn't forget, I'm not alone. Others see too. His words weren't just carelessness, they were revelation. The secret is alive, and sooner or later, it will come out. And when that happens, my daughter will understand that I was the one who saw it first. The party went on, but it was no longer the same. With every burst of laughter, there was also a whisper. With every smile, a suspicious glance. Perfection was beginning to wear away. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that the farce was living on borrowed time. The party went on, but something in the air had changed. It wasn't just me who noticed. The discreet whispers, the curious glances, the tension hidden behind the smiles all showed that the groom's toast had left its mark. Perfection was no longer so perfect, and it was in that atmosphere that what I had feared and at the same time secretly wanted finally happened. For the first time that night, my daughter looked at me. I was still sitting in the corner, trying to protect myself from the crowd. I had become almost invisible, a specter at the edge of the hall. But suddenly, she crossed the dance floor, and our eyes met. It lasted only an instant, but an instant that carried the weight of a lifetime. In her eyes, I first saw surprise. Maybe she hadn't expected to see me there. Maybe she'd believed I wouldn't have the courage to show up. Then I saw something harder to decipher. A strange flicker, a brief hesitation. It wasn't just happiness, it wasn't just disdain, there was doubt. A small tremor, as if something inside her had begun to question itself. My heart raced. I wanted to stand up, run to her, hold her the way I did when she was still my little girl. I wanted to say, "I'm here. I've never stopped being here." But I couldn't. I stayed frozen, my hands trembling, gripping the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. Because, along with the doubt, I also saw the weight of the decision she had already made. She wouldn't turn back, not yet. My daughter quickly looked away and went back to smiling at the guests, but that single second stayed with me. A second when, behind her smile, I saw the girl who once wrote me notes saying she loved me to the sky. A second when I realized, maybe she wasn't completely lost yet. Maybe there was a crack through which the truth could slip in. The stepmother, always alert, noticed it too. I saw her eyes follow my daughter's, saw her notice that for an instant she had looked at me, and I clearly saw the discomfort in her face. She quickly pulled my daughter back into the circle of guests, hugging her, whispering something in her ear. My daughter smiled again, but that strange flicker was still there. It was small, fragile, almost invisible, but it existed. And that was enough to spark a new hope in me. I kept watching from afar. Each time the stepmother moved away, my daughter seemed more thoughtful. She didn't show much, but I, who had known her since she was a baby, could see it. A shift in her gaze, a furrowed brow, a heavier breath. She was trying to hide it, but there was a shadow of doubt growing inside her. And I knew why. The groom's words, "Not even the debts of the past." That phrase had hit her. Even if she didn't want to admit it, she had felt it. I noted mentally. Today, she looked at me. It was quick, but enough. In her eyes there was surprise, there was doubt. The stepmother noticed and tried to smother it, but I saw. My daughter is not completely lost. The spell is starting to break. And when the truth comes out, it will be impossible to hide it. Meanwhile, The guests went on with the party, oblivious to the storm I was living. The music played, the toasts went on, photos were taken endlessly. But I couldn't hear any of it anymore. My mind was caught in that look. It was like an invisible thread that tied us together again after so long. A fragile thread, but one that still held, and I clung to it with all the strength in my heart. The pain was still there, sharp, tearing, but along with it came something new. Hope. Hope that, no matter how hard they tried to erase me, no matter how much they humiliated me in public, the truth was already beginning to seep in. And my daughter, even without realizing it, was already starting to see. The hall was already emptying. The waiters were clearing glasses, the flowers were beginning to wilt, the most animated guests still lingered on the dance floor, laughing loudly, almost drunk. It was the end of a night that, for many, would be remembered as a fairy tale. But I knew, beneath the glitter, the cracks were multiplying. It was while I waited for the right moment to slip away discreetly that I heard something that changed everything. I was still sitting in my corner, watching, when two men passed too close to my table. They spoke in low voices, but not low enough. He was bold to go up there and talk about debts, don't you think? Bold or careless, I know exactly what he was talking about. His father still owes me to this day. And they say he himself has gotten into dirty business. Dirty business. Yes, bets, loans he never paid. Dangerous people. No wonder he was nervous. My heart stopped for a moment. I felt the blood turn cold. They were talking about the groom, the man my daughter had just married. I couldn't help it. I leaned in discreetly, trying to catch every word. They went on. I heard he got rid of a heavy debt recently, but only because a friend took it over. This wedding might be exactly the cover he needed. A cover, of course. Marrying the daughter of a respectable-looking family gives him another image, doesn't it? Makes it seem like he's changed his life. I gripped the edge of the table tightly, feeling my heart race. My instinct had never been so right. The groom was hiding something serious, something that could drag my daughter down with him. Their voices drifted away, lost in the murmur of the party. I stayed there, motionless, trying to absorb what I'd just heard. It was worse than I imagined. It wasn't just debts from the past. It was a dangerous, dirty past that could come back at any moment. I looked at my daughter on the dance floor, smiling, spinning in her white dress. She looked so happy, so innocent. She had no idea of the storm she was walking into. And that tore me apart inside. Because, no matter how much she had erased me, no matter how much she had humiliated me, she was still my daughter. And I could never watch her be destroyed without a fight. I knew the truth would come to light. And when it did, I would be ready to stand tall. Because deep down, even invisible, I was the only one still watching over her. After hearing the conversation about the groom and his shady business dealings, it felt as if the ground had opened beneath my feet. My heart was racing, and my hands trembled so much I could barely hold the glass, still sitting on the table. I needed air, needed to leave the hall before I broke down in front of everyone. I walked slowly toward the side corridor, the one leading to the bathrooms. There, the noise of the party faded, the distant music muffled as if coming from another world. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears threatening to fall. I entered the ladies' room. The space was empty, silent, the smell of flowers mingling with the perfume of the guests who had passed through. I washed my face, looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Red eyes, a worn-out face, my simple dress in stark contrast to all the luxury I'd seen at the party. It was like looking at a stranger. I leaned over the sink and whispered to myself, "Strength. This is not the time to fall." But before I could pull myself together, the door opened. It was her, the stepmother, alone, elegant, still wearing the forced smile she displayed in the hall. But at that moment, when she saw me there, the smile disappeared. We stood in silence for a few seconds, staring at each other in the mirror's reflection. The air seemed to grow heavy, suffocating. There was no audience, no guests, no cameras. It was just the two of us. And without witnesses, her mask finally fell. She was the first to speak, her voice dripping with venom. "I didn't think you'd have the courage to come. I thought you'd learned to hide in your little corner, like you always did." I swallowed hard. I'm her mother. I had every right to be here. She laughed, but without joy. "Right. You lost that right the moment you left space for me. She doesn't need you. She never did. And today, everyone saw who her real mother is." That sentence was like a knife. But for the first time, I didn't look away. I met her gaze and answered firmly, "You can fool everyone, but not me. I know what you are." She stepped closer, her eyes flashing. "And who's going to believe you? A forgotten woman who didn't even get an invitation. Look at yourself. You don't belong here. I'm the one she chose. I'm the one he shows off proudly. And you're just a shadow." My whole body was trembling, but not with fear, with anger. Suddenly, all the weight of accumulated humiliation seemed to turn into fire inside me, and I said, my voice steady, "Masks fall, they always do. One day, even she will see who you really are." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. It wasn't fear, it was irritation, a spark of loss of control. She hadn't expected me to have the courage to answer. The stepmother came even closer, so close I could smell her strong perfume, and whispered, "Until then, enjoy your place at the back, because this wedding is my triumph, not yours." She turned sharply and left, letting the door slam behind her. I stayed there, alone, breathing hard. My legs were weak, but at the same time a new flame burned inside me. I had seen, I had heard. She herself had admitted, without masks, that her goal was to erase me. And in that moment, a certainty filled my heart. I would not allow it, not anymore. I knew I had weapons too. I had seen her mask fall, and sooner or later, everyone would see it too. When I came back from the bathroom, my body was still trembling. The stepmother's words echoed inside me like knives. "You're just a shadow. This wedding is my triumph." As much as they hurt, they didn't knock me down. On the contrary, something inside me reignited. I was no longer just a forgotten victim. I was someone who knew too much, but in the middle of that whirlwind, something happened I didn't expect. Someone approached me, someone who had seen more than they should, someone who decided to reach out a hand. I was sitting again in my corner, waiting for the party to end so I could leave unnoticed, when I felt a presence beside me. I looked up and saw a middle-aged woman, discreet, with a steady, compassionate gaze. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "May I sit here?" I nodded, surprised. She pulled out the chair, placed her purse on her lap, and took a deep breath. Then she said quietly, "I know who you are. I know you're her mother." My heart started racing. I could barely respond. "And why are you telling me this?" She looked at me seriously. "Because I've seen things tonight I can't ignore. I saw the way the stepmother spoke about you. I saw how she tried to erase your presence. And I also heard conversations about the groom. Conversations that worried me." I swallowed hard. "You also heard about the debts." She nodded slowly. "Yes, and I know it wasn't an exaggeration. My brother knows people connected to him, and they're not good people. This wedding, I don't know if it's safe for your daughter." My stomach turned. There it was, the confirmation of what I had feared. It wasn't just gossip. It wasn't just my impression. It was real. And the most frightening part, now there were witnesses besides me. She touched my hand, squeezing it firmly. "You can't give up on her. Even if she rejects you now, even if everyone turns their back on you, your daughter is going to need you. And when that day comes, you have to be ready." Tears ran silently down my face. I hadn't expected compassion that night, much less help. But here was someone reminding me I wasn't completely alone. "Why are you doing this for me?" I asked, my voice trembling. She gave me a sad smile. "Because I've been in your place. I know what it's like to be erased, replaced, silenced. But I learned the hard way that if we don't stay firm, the ones who lose are always the ones we love. Don't let them do that to your daughter." Her words entered me like a breath of life. For the first time that night, I didn't feel so invisible. There was someone who saw me, someone who confirmed that my pain wasn't madness, wasn't paranoia. I hugged her, not caring about the looks around us, and whispered, "Thank you. I won't give up on her. Never." When the party finally ended, I walked out into the silent streets with a different feeling. There was still pain, there was still humiliation, but there was also a new flame. I wasn't alone. And, more importantly, my daughter wasn't as protected as she thought. Soon, she would need me, and I would be ready. The party was already dragging into the early hours of the morning. The guests were exhausted, some lying across chairs, others dancing offbeat, surrendered to drunkenness. The waiters collected empty glasses, and the music, once vibrant, seemed to be fading. I waited for the right moment to slip away in silence, carrying with me all the pain and all the revelations of that night. But then something strange happened. And suddenly, the whole hall noticed the bride and groom had disappeared. At first, I thought it was just another delay, maybe they had gone to change clothes or rest for a few minutes. But the minutes stretched on, and soon, the whispers began. Did you see where they went? Strange. I thought they were in the dressing room. The groom left in a hurry. Didn't you see? He looked nervous. My hands went cold. I immediately remembered the toast, his words about debts of the past, and I thought, had everything already started to fall apart? The stepmother was the first to notice the impact it was having. She rushed from table to table, trying to calm the guests. Don't worry, they just stepped out for some air. They'll be back soon. But her voice rang false, and her eyes betrayed unease. She herself didn't know where they were. My heart raced even faster. If my daughter had left with him, if he was already nervous and full of secrets, what had happened? I rose from my chair, trying to hide my agitation. I crossed the hall toward the side door where the waiters came and went. I looked out at the parking lot of the venue, and I saw the groom's car was no longer there. A chill ran down my spine. He had left, and he had taken my daughter with him. Some guests noticed the missing car too. Soon, the whispers grew louder. Do you think they've already gone on their honeymoon? But without telling anyone? How rude. I found it all very strange. The hall, once full of laughter, now filled with suspicious murmurs. The charm of the perfect wedding was crumbling, turning into doubt and unease. The stepmother, furious, returned to the microphone. She tried to smile, but her voice was tense. Dear ones, please don't start speculating. The bride and groom had to leave earlier, but everything is fine. We thank you all for being here, and we wish you a good night. It was a desperate attempt to control the situation, but it didn't work. The guests applauded without enthusiasm, and many left exchanging heavy looks, whispering among themselves. The wedding that was supposed to be remembered as a fairy tale ended as a mystery. From the back of the hall, I took a deep breath. My daughter had vanished alongside a man who carried debts and dangerous dealings. No one knew where they had gone, and for the first time, I realized she might already be in danger. My chest burned with fear, but at the same time, there was a strange calm in me, because somehow, I knew this disappearance would be the next crack, and the more the cracks grew, the closer would come the day when the truth would be revealed. The city was quiet when I returned home. The streets, empty and dark, stood in stark contrast to the murmur of the party still echoing in my ears. Silence wrapped around me like a heavy cloak, and each step toward the door felt harder than the last. When I entered, the house was cold, still, as if it had been waiting for me without breathing. No voices, no sound but the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was as though the entire world had stopped and only I remained, carrying the weight of everything that had happened. I sat at the kitchen table without turning on the lights, let my bag fall onto the chair, and stayed there, motionless, staring into the darkness. What I had just lived through felt like a nightmare. The stepmother celebrated as the mother, the groom confessing disguised debts, the guests whispering, and finally, their sudden disappearance. I closed my eyes and saw the scene again. The empty parking lot, the missing car, the sense that my daughter was heading toward a fate she didn't understand. A wave of anguish took hold of me. I should have done something. I should have run after them, stopped them, shouted, but I didn't. I stayed frozen, a prisoner of silence. I got up and wandered through the living room like a lost shadow. The old photographs still hung on the walls, images of a time when my daughter was just a smiling little girl in my arms. I touched one of them with my fingertips, and the tears came. Where did you go to lose yourself, my daughter? Where did you go to forget me? No answer came, only silence. I took my notebook and began to write. The words came out shaky, but they had to be recorded. Today I came back alone. The house was empty, but inside me there was a deafening noise. The stepmother triumphed in public, but her mask has already shown cracks. The groom tried to hide his past, but the words slipped out. The guests began to doubt, and in the end, they disappeared. No one knows where they went. No one knows what will happen. I only know that my daughter is in danger, and I, even forgotten, will not let her fall alone. I closed the notebook and stared at the window. The moon lit up the garden, outside a garden I had cared for over the years. The flowers were still there, standing firm even after so many storms, and as I looked at them, I understood. I had to resist. They could erase me in public, humiliate me, steal the roles that had always been mine. But they couldn't take the truth from me. They couldn't stop me from being a mother. And no matter how hard they tried, the truth would come. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in the armchair in the living room, wrapped in silence, reliving every detail of the party. The stepmother's speech, the doubt in my daughter's eyes, the guests' whispers, the revelations about the groom, and finally, the emptiness left by their disappearance. It was as if that silence was the calm before the storm. And I knew the storm would come. And when it came, no one would be left unscathed. At dawn, still unable to close my eyes, I wrote the last sentence in the notebook before standing up. This was the first silence, the first of many, but I know that soon the silence will be broken. And when that happens, the truth will speak louder than any lie. The sun rose without me having slept a single minute. My eyes burned, my head throbbed, but my heart stayed on alert. At every noise coming from the street, I ran to the window, hoping to see some sign. Nothing. No news, no phone call, no message. It was as if my daughter had disappeared with him into a void. Around noon, the first bits of news began to arrive. Not by phone, but through the whispers of neighbors, the hushed comments drifting across the street. Someone said they'd seen their car at a gas station on the outskirts of town. Another swore the couple had been spotted at a modest hotel, nothing like the luxurious destination they had announced for their honeymoon. The versions contradicted each other, but all had one thing in common: they weren't where they were supposed to be. My chest tightened more with each story. My daughter, newly married, wasn't living the fairy tale she had dreamed of. She was lost in one of his lies, in some hideout, maybe on the run. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook open, trying to organize my thoughts. I wrote, "Today I heard rumors about their whereabouts. Some say they ran far away, others that they're hiding nearby. But everyone agrees. They've strayed from the path," they announced. "And that can only mean one thing. My daughter has already entered his labyrinth of secrets, and I, even from the outside, need to find the way out." In the afternoon, someone finally knocked at my door. It was the same distant cousin who had spoken to me at the party. He came in without ceremony, his face serious. "You heard?" he asked. I nodded. "I've heard rumors, but I don't know what to believe." He took a deep breath. "They're not just rumors. I have a friend who works at the hotel where they stayed last night. It wasn't anything like a honeymoon. A cheap, hidden place with no glamour. And the worst part, he looked nervous, tense, like he was running from someone." My heart froze. "And her? How was my daughter?" He hesitated before answering. "She smiled, as always, but my friend said her eyes couldn't hide the fear." My legs went weak. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling. That was it. She was beginning to see. The illusion was beginning to unravel. And suddenly I realized the doubt I had seen in her eyes at the party hadn't been my imagination. She already sensed something was wrong. Now, away from the crowd's eyes, maybe she was beginning to understand who was really beside her. What should I do? I asked my cousin, desperate. He shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe it's too soon to act. But prepare yourself. When she realizes the whole truth, she needs someone, and you need to be ready." I nodded in silence. His words echoed inside me like an order. "Be ready. Don't give up. Wait for the right moment." That night, I returned to my ritual. I wrote in my notebook. They came back, but not to the life they announced. They came back to a hiding place. They came back to silence. And in that silence, my daughter has begun to feel the weight of his lies. I wasn't there, but I know. I know because I know her. I know because I saw. The flame of doubt already burns inside her. And when it burns brighter, she will come to me. I must be standing when that day arrives. I lay down exhausted, but, for the first time, with real hope. They could run, they could try to hide, but they couldn't keep their masks on for long. And when the real return came, the truth would come with it. I was ready to receive her. The following days were wrapped in silence and rumors. No one was sure of anything, but the stories multiplied like fire in dry straw. Some said the newlyweds had gone to a secret destination. Others claimed he was hiding debts. And, little by little, the whispers from the wedding began turning into open comments. From my window, I heard everything. The neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, talking as if it were a soap opera. It was strange, wasn't it? Him talking about debts at his own wedding. I heard it wasn't just that. They say he's been involved in illegal betting. Poor girl, starting her life like that. Each sentence was a punch to my chest. Not because it surprised me, I already knew, but because now it wasn't just me who saw. The whole town was beginning to see. The final blow came on a Sunday afternoon when I went to the bakery. I walked in, trying to be discreet, but I clearly heard two men talking near the counter. Her son-in-law owes money to dangerous people. They say even the honeymoon was postponed because of it. Ah, but whoever marries into debt, marries into trouble. That girl's going to suffer. They didn't know I was right behind them, listening. Or, if they did, they didn't care. My face burned with shame, but also with indignation. My daughter, my blood, had become a topic on the street corner, and all because of a man who had deceived her. I went back home with heavy steps, carrying the bag of bread as if it were a stone. I sat at the kitchen table, took a deep breath, and opened my notebook. The truth is no longer mine alone. It runs through the streets, spreads among the neighbors, gains strength. The groom is no longer seen as a prince, but as someone dangerous. My daughter still doesn't see it, still clings to the illusion, but soon she won't be able to deny it. And when that day comes, I'll be ready. Because no matter how much they've tried to erase me, it won't be the stepmother holding her. When everything collapses, it will be me. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, the silence wasn't pain. It was waiting, preparation. I knew the fall would come, and it would come publicly, the same way humiliation had struck me. And for the first time, I felt that perhaps destiny was, little by little, giving back what had been taken from me. The days that followed were unlike anything I could have imagined. The streets no longer spoke of flowers, of the white dress, or of the stepmother's smile. They spoke of debts, of gambling, of shady business. They spoke of him, the groom who played the prince at the altar, but, behind the lights, dragged iron chains on his feet. And little by little, perfection crumbled before everyone's eyes. It didn't take long for the news to become official. First came the comments, then the open accusations. Creditors began to appear, demanding old debts. Some knocked on the door of the building where my daughter now lived. Others made a scene right there in the street, exposing the farce he had tried so hard to hide. My daughter, ashamed, tried to silence everything. The stepmother, desperate, told everyone it was just misunderstandings, that it would soon be resolved. But there was no hiding it anymore. The groom, now husband, was neck-deep in trouble, and one day, he simply vanished. Just like he had on the wedding night, he disappeared, but this time, he didn't come back. He left my daughter alone, saddled with debts that weren't hers and a soul in pieces. With his downfall, the stepmother lost her glow. The looks that once carried admiration turned into judgment. The same people who had applauded her as mother now stared with contempt, and she, nervous, began to contradict herself. She tried to defend herself, lashed out at those who questioned her, and soon enough, let slip the poison she had once hidden so well. What I had seen in the bathroom, her cruelty without masks, now everyone could see. No one believed her anymore. No one applauded. It was on a cold morning that someone knocked at my door. I was in the kitchen, writing in my notebook, when I heard the trembling knocks. I opened it, and there she was, my daughter. The white dress no longer shone. Her face was marked with dark circles, her eyes red from so much crying. She seemed smaller, broken, lost. For a moment, we stood in silence. She looked at me through tears and said only, "Mom, I'm sorry." My whole body trembled. The words I had waited to hear for so long were there, right in front of me, and without thinking, I embraced her. A long, tight hug, full of tears. It was as if time had stopped, as if, for one instant, nothing else mattered. Sitting at the kitchen table, she told me everything. The false promises, the lies, the fear she had felt since the night of the wedding, the debts she discovered, the dangerous people who came after them, and, finally, the abandonment. I thought I was beginning a fairy tale, but it was a nightmare. I didn't see, I didn't want to see, and I erased you when I needed you the most. I touched her hand and answered, my voice breaking. I was always here. Even when you shut the door on me, I kept watching over you, because a mother's love doesn't disappear. It can be ignored, it can be trampled, but it never ends. She cried in silence, and I cried with her. And in that moment, I understood. It didn't matter how much humiliation, how much pain I would go through it all again, just to have her back. In the days that followed, we began to rebuild. She came home for a while, trying to regain her strength. Little by little, she recovered her dignity, her hope, and I, with every gesture, showed her that I didn't need forgiveness to love her, because a mother's love has no conditions. The stepmother, meanwhile, disappeared from conversations. No one spoke her name with admiration anymore. Her name became synonymous with lies. And I didn't need to do anything. Life itself had taken care of showing who she really was. One night, I sat again with my notebook. My daughter was already asleep in the room next door. At peace for the first time in months, I opened to the last page and wrote, "They tried to erase me, tried to tear me away from the place that was always mine. They laughed at me, humiliated me, called me a shadow. But the truth doesn't need applause to exist. It blooms in silence, and when it blooms, no one can uproot it." Today, my daughter came back, not as the girl who once forgot me, but as the woman who finally saw, and me. I'm still here, standing, because a mother's love cannot be erased. It endures, it waits, it is reborn. I closed the notebook and smiled, tears in my eyes. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was a real ending, with pain, with losses, but also with love and dignity. And deep down, that had always been what mattered most. And in your opinion, was I fair in my reaction? Or should I have acted differently? Tell me in the comments. Like the video and subscribe to the channel so more people can hear this story.